Whalley, or City Centre as it's now called, here in the city of Surrey is the spot to invest if you're looking for a condo. And yes, in the past, I've actually recommended to avoid this area like your neighbors in April of 2020. However, things change. And if you're thinking about investing in Surrey real estate and you think that City Centre is somewhere where you would like to put your money, or if you're planning to move to Surrey but need access to the SkyTrain and can't wait 5 years for that SkyTrain to extend out to Langley, because that 5-year SkyTrain extension to Langley is actually a 7-year extension to Fleetwood, well, then this video is for you. But before I give you a tour of the area and let you know where I think you might want to put your money or areas you may want to avoid, first, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe to this channel, as that's your best way to stay up to date on Surrey and Fraser Valley real estate. And since you're so nice and you very likely want other nice people just like you to invest around your new investment, I'm going to ask that you click the like button to get this information out to other nice people that are just like you, therefore immediately making your new neighborhood of your next purchase even better than it already is now. So thank you so much for being so nice and making Whalley a better place, or should I say City Centre? Yep, that's right. I was born and raised in Surrey, and a few years back they came up with this name City Centre, and I always knew the area as Whalley. I mean, I used to ride my bike down there to 108th and King George to the baseball card shop, and it was rough back then, and we called it Whalley. Now that particular area is still rough, but I'm going to get into it here and show you where I think you should or maybe shouldn't look into. Now, one thing I will point out before we go any further, the city has resources around Whalley or City Centre like you wouldn't believe. There is no shortage of information. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, the way I look at City Centre. Let me get to my desktop. Here we go. Basically, here's the story with Whalley. Whalley has always been up and coming, okay? It's been a rough spot, as I mentioned, since before my time, when we used to ride our bikes down there and, get Slurpees at the Circle K on 108th and King George and go to the baseball card shop. I never could figure out why the guy selling the baseball cards had a really long, pinky fingernail. But you live in Surrey long enough and you grow up, you figure out what that's all about anyway. A little rougher spot. But the city has cleaned it up. And here's a beautiful shot of what Whalley looks like now. The city centre kind of goes something like this. The city was saying, hey, we want all these businesses and all these beautiful towers in this picture to come. So businesses, please come. Developers, please come. We want towers. We want density. And basically at one point, all those people, all the developers, all the business said, wait a minute, Mr. Mayor or Mrs. Mayor or whoever was mayor at that time, you want us to invest in the worst spot in your city. And you guys are sitting down there in City Hall off of Highway 10 on this nice big, basically acreage near the courthouse. Put your money where your mouth is. And that's actually what Diane Watts did when she was mayor. And I'm sure we're probably going to see it somewhere around here, but they actually moved City Hall right into Whalley, making it now the new kind of downtown. And that is actually some of the slogans that you're going to see. This is now downtown Surrey. Surrey kind of has arrived. The downside to Surrey has always been that the SkyTrain ends right here, right? Like it ends right at the tip of Surrey. It's not the nicest part of Surrey, so that's why Surrey gets kind of the bad name. One thing I did notice, and I'll get into it here, is there are so many plan updates. I actually couldn't even find them all for the city center community plan. You can see them starting way back in the day. I think the original city center was started to build in the 80s. And just like Metrotown was planned in the 50s. Right? And now it's totally arrived. So it's almost a 50-year plan. Now that we started building in the 80s, I would suggest that the fact that we're almost 50 years after 1980 is leading towards the fact that Whalley has arrived, if you want to call it that. So there's lots of plans. As I said, there's tons of different spots. There's a few I want to focus on here. For instance, the central kind of business district, we'll get into that a little bit. That one of these actually does have a very good breakdown. Let me find it here of the different districts. But this particular plan that I'm dealing with right here, I think is like the 2017 update. So again, they're constantly new updates being tossed in. I wanted to show you this one here, which is on urbansurrey.com. This little map here is a really, really good indication of where I think people should be looking and not looking. So for instance, this spot right here, where Gateway Station is, personally, I would still try and avoid that 108th and King George area. Gateway Station, there are some towers there. City Point is there. There's a few buildings in that area. Personally, if we can avoid it because of the things like the addiction problems and everything that is there, that's the spot where it is. Now you have this nicely named historic district here. That's where the Flamingo is now being built. The Flamingo, if you don't know, was the rough kind of bar and adult dancing of previous. So that's where the site is. So they're using those historic names. There was a bunch of old restaurants down here way back in the day, some divey old diners, lots of pawn shops. Well, they're trying to revive that as the historic district. Personally, I would probably still try and stay away from the historic district, Gateway district. Gateway's not bad once you get down the hill here. This is north, but it's actually down a northern slope. But this area right along 108th here is probably where I would start to avoid. The Bailey, that is where the parks are. There's the Lions training facility, BC Lions, and a bunch of the parks are amazing. Would I want to live there? No. There's still a lot of criminal activity in that area, a lot of, as I said, addiction problems. There's sex work and stuff in that particular spot. So if I could avoid those three spots, that's probably where I would avoid. My next kind of spot is Boulevard. Now, I mean, I grew up on weekends at my dad's house in Boulevard. It's always, again, been a little bit of a rougher spot. And the Forsyth, this is not where I want to be, guys. I don't see the big value items in these spots. They're coming. They're not there yet. Where I think if you're looking to invest in the area, should consider are the following. First of all, I've just put out a video recently. King George is the spot you want to be. If you can get in this King George, or what they call now the hub, King George hub, that's where I think you should actually be. Central downtown is going to be an interesting spot, and I'll try and show you why that is. But this is where most of the business is. This is where the mall is, T&T Market, the big business towers that are there. The West Village is actually going to be a cool spot. This is kind of on the verge of where Ultra is and all that. Ultra, I guess, is right on the border there. But that is actually going to be a really cool spot. There's a lot of kind of high rises and kind of lower rise or even townhouses being built in that spot. I think this is going to be a really, really good area. Holland Park. Obviously, the park itself is beautiful. A lot of this development is not quite there yet. Lots of still single-family houses and all that stuff in that area. Now, the one to watch out for, and I'm going to touch on this even further, is the medical district. Obviously, you've got Surrey Memorial Hospital there. You've got a bunch of buildings. One spot that you may want to look out for in the future is Parkwood, which is really, really old buildings. But I think as I show you some other spots with Google Maps later on, you're going to see that there are some opportunities there, maybe if you're looking for things like rentals and then future values. So I'm a big fan of Medical District. There's actually been an addition to Medical District, which I'm going to try and show you as well. And then West Green Timbers, I don't think you're there yet. That's basically where JPOC is. JPOC's just off to the side here with Jim Patterson Outpatient Center. It's coming around. There's a bunch of kind of buildings in that area. That's okay. I just don't see the big development there because it's still kind of mid-rise, 6-7 stories. It's not kind of the high-rise downtown stuff that you're going to get in central downtown. But let's keep moving on. Again, more websites that you can check out. This particular one is surreycitycentre.ca. A ton of amazing info. But I want to pop into one of the plans that I found. And I believe this plan here is actually one of them, could be from 2017. Don't quote me on that. Is it going to give me a date? It doesn't look like it is. But this is the thing I wanted to show everybody here. Let me switch it around for you. The density planning is something that you want to pay attention to if you're looking for future investment, whether or not something's already at its maximum use, or if you're looking to get into certain buildings or certain areas that may be bought out by developers for future value or greater value. I don't think that's a very good strategy because there's no guarantee that that will ever happen. However, I think that there is some upside should you choose to try and get into an older building that's going to be sold off for high rises and that in the future. So as you can tell, all the purple stuff is the really dense stuff. Mixed use is all the commercial, the light purple. There's a lot of mid-rise and higher rise kind of red stuff, mixed use. But I want to kind of focus, as I said, down this way. So you can see right around King George Station here, it's all built up now. So if you want a current value property, I think that's probably the best spot. This hub, Infinity Tower, Park Place, all that stuff that's been put in there is just fantastic. And I think that's where the future is. And the reason I think that is such a positive is because you've got the medical district down here with Surrey Memorial. And believe it or not, I couldn't find an updated plan because there's so many plans and I didn't want to go through hundreds of pages of each. This particular plan I'm looking at, I'm on page 3 of 273 pages. It's actually, the medical district has moved now over to 140th and come down south of 94th Avenue. So this next little block over here is all currently detached single family homes, but well, not all. No, I stand corrected. I believe it all is. We'll look at the Google map and verify that. However, this has been also now included. There is a stream there that kind of gets in the way and some other stuff going on. But I do think that eventually medical buildings will pop into this area as well. I want to zoom in here. I mentioned Park Woods. So this is King George Highway and 96. So that means Park Woods is an old building set, 4 or 5 buildings in there, really low value. I do think those are being ripe for the picking for future building eventually. I want to say it's kind of that orangey mixed use. So it is lower density still currently. I could see that possibly changing in the future. And I want to say some buildings up in here on, let's call it 102 and 101 and 139 and 138. There's a bunch of stuff like Breezeway in there. I can see all of these buildings being kind of ripe for the picking for developers in the future, even though currently they're just still mixed use or lower rise. I think you're going to see a bunch of this stuff start to change over. And I've even heard in talking with some clients that some of these buildings over here that are currently townhouses as well, just off of Old Yeo and 132, have already been bought by developers. And so they're going to continue. Can I even show you where that is? There we go. They're going to continue to just densify this area. So before I get really quickly into the maps and a little bit, kind of more of an exploratory for you, I'm going to suggest still that if you can avoid it, stick away from this kind of top end of city center. Try and focus your efforts right now around the King George Station if you're looking at it, getting in that area. This kind of western side of the mall, I think where, those buildings, like I said, like Ultra are, even though Ultra is going through its own problems right now. You can Google that if you want. But I do think those are the nicer spots that you're going to find. So let's hop into the maps. Okay, so here we go. This is where everybody thinks. Now, I'm going to show you the city of Surrey. The city of Surrey is actually this entire section here. But Whalley is just right up here where it says Surrey. So this is where everybody thinks Surrey is. And the reason why so much investment is in this particular area. But those maps that we just showed, this is Whalley. It's basically 140th to 132, 112th, probably a little bit further up than that actually, down to 96th Avenue. And then, as I said, in the medical district, it does stretch a little bit further down. Let's see if I can layer this in to give you a bit closer of a tour. Now you're going to notice immediately this big green patch here, green timbers, urban forest. They've done some pretty cool things. There's a lake in there now. There's some pretty cool trails, but it's really not what it was when I was growing up. It was actually a forestry reserve. And then at some point in time, they took out a bunch of that and they put in Jim Patterson Outpatient Center, which is amazing. If you've ever needed to do blood work or any tests or anything, Jim Patterson Outpatient Center is probably one of the best medical facilities there could possibly be. And the first train stop of the new expansion is going to end up right here on this corner of Fraser Highway and 140th. So I think for future, that's still within walking distance of King George Station. However, I think for future, this corridor right here between 140th and King George Station is probably going to be good. However, it's still currently mostly built up at the moment, and I don't see a bunch of new developments coming in that area. But then this massive building over here is actually RCMP headquarters. Now, this is a little bit controversial. A lot of people don't understand exactly what's happening with the RCMP in Surrey. Everybody thinks that the RCMP is actually leaving Surrey, and they are from a policing standpoint, but headquarters for provincial actually still staying right here, and it's a nice big huge building, and I want to say there's something like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of members in there doing, I don't even know what they do. I'm assuming forensics and all their headquartery type stuff. You can see by the size of the parking lot, it's an absolutely massive building and impressive building. And then if I'm not mistaken, you end up with this little bit of forestry reserve buildings and some fun stuff left, but that's about it. But that's not even Whalley. So let me go back into Whalley itself. So as I mentioned, I'm going to start in the medical district. Surrey Memorial Hospital is right here, and now it is extending to all the other buildings. Now, when I was growing up, the only medical buildings around Surrey Memorial were my doctor, Dr. Martin. I don't know if you're still around, but was in this tiny little building right here, and they've expanded. Most of these buildings south of 94A are now all medical buildings. There's obviously the hospital that's had massive upgrades over the years, and now all of these buildings from about 97A South to 96th Avenue are also all medical buildings in there. Okay, I'm going to cross the street here, and I mentioned Parkwoods. Parkwoods are really old, some of the most affordable apartment buildings that are freehold. That's this area here in Whalley. I do think that they are ripe for being bought out. I don't know how they're going to do it with that many units, or how it's all going to go with stratas and whatnot, multiple different strata buildings. But I do think Parkwoods has a chance of being bought out in the future if they change the plan and start bringing high rises in here. I could totally see that happening. Not guaranteeing a darn thing. Groove was one of the newer or one of the first kind of buildings brought back in there of the new age, the after 2000 age. You got the CRA Tax Center. So that's why I think this kind of area of Hub and the King George Station, everything is so good, because you've got the CRA Tax Center, you've got all this medical work and everything going on down here, and it's all within walking distance of the train. And on top of that, the city has put in Holland Park, and Holland Park is now absolutely gorgeous, and they're only ever expanding it and making it even nicer. They took out all the bushes where all the homeless people used to hang out, and Holland Park is actually a pretty nice place to hang out and go put a blanket out and chill out in the sunshine. Then we've got City Center. So this is the mall. Surrey Place Mall. When I was growing up, now I guess it's City Center Mall or something else. I don't even know what they call it anymore, because I don't go there anymore. But you will know it because of the big building. Let's see if I can get the 3D thing. This big iconic building here in Surrey is the mall for all intents and purposes. SFU is there. That is a big driving factor to why so many people like this area. By the way, apparently UBC has just purchased a whole bunch of property out in this area as well. There is the KPU campus, and I don't even know if that building, the Civic Center building, is not even on this map yet. Over on this side of University, these are kind of actually some kind of old maps. Let's see if I can. You've got Linnea, which isn't even showing yet. It's actually a few years old now. The building right next door to that is Wave. This is the area. This is actually Ultra here. Like I said, Ultra's got its issues. You should Google that if you're searching in the area. All of this area right now is being just developed like crazy, and I'm actually a big fan of it. I think if you're looking to relocate to Whalley, that this area between University and 133rd is a very viable option. Another couple that buildings, Yale House, my partner Chris has, I think, helped almost every single person in Yale House move over the years. Yale House is here. I think it's one of those buildings that's ripe for the picking to get sold out. You've got a bunch of old townhomes, really old buildings. Some of these buildings are so old they don't have laundry. So that's something to consider. There will be a bunch of these buildings, I think, over the years, if they're not already being taken out. I'm going to set off to the other side here. You would notice that in one of the other maps that I showed you, this side, Whalley Boulevard, all the way over to 140th is I don't know. I just don't see the big future there right now unless you're kind of south of 102. I do know a bunch of these areas. Now, Odyssey Tower is one of the original high-rises right here. But I do know that there are a bunch of these complexes in this area that have been approached or will be approached very shortly by developers that are looking to take out things like, the Breezeway or different developments and just knock them down, basically buy out all the people at a little bit extra cost. And then knock them down and build high rises, or if they're 2 or 3 stories, which most of them are, they're looking at putting in 6 or 7 stories. So it makes it worth it for the developers. One thing you want to consider in this area, see this little green patch right here? That little green patch is power lines. So obviously if you can avoid being super close to the power lines, I personally would recommend doing that. And then as we move north here of 104th Avenue, this is where personally I would stay away from still. It's kind of a long plan. Actually, that's not necessarily true. There's a couple of really good buildings just here off of University. But really, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the area, even though you've got all these great athletic parks. I mean, Whalley Little League Baseball, that's our team that we usually send to the Little League World Series. They play right here, and they're an amazing team. BC Lions train right down there, but this area, specifically 135A Street, City Parkway, there's just still the homelessness issue. There's the addiction issue. There's the sex trade worker issue that is still just ravishing this area. And when you cross over King George, you're going to end up too in this kind of, the flamingo and all that stuff that's going to be in this area. Personally, I don't see it yet. I know the flamingo, I think, sold out in like a day, and they're selling it like $1,000 a square foot, which previous to that building was absolutely unheard of in Surrey. But for me, it's just not there yet. I would like to stick on the other side. Then you have Gateway Station, as I mentioned. Let me zoom in here for you. Gateway Station. Now, the community around this area, as I mentioned, not the best. But if you are, say, in City Point and you like the building, you can literally walk kitty corner across the street into Gateway Station and you're commuting fine. Now, would I walk down the street at night? Personally, probably not. I'm going to try to avoid it. I wouldn't really myself worry about safety. But if I was a single female walking down the street, I might. This is an area you can tell that the development and everything is going to be absolutely fantastic. I know there was some fires and stuff in some of the buildings down here in the past too, which isn't making it a better argument for being in that area. I just don't see it being there next. And then the Boulevard District currently, again, is all kind of single family homes. There's not much in there. I think there's a couple of micro suites. I'll give you an example of why I'm not a big fan of this particular area. A few years ago, I believe it might even be this home right here. I actually sold that property, and this is all getting assembled to be more units. And when we handed over keys on that property, It obviously, to the developer, it obviously sat vacant for a few days. And I think that there was people living inside that house squatting very, very quickly thereafter. And believe it or not, that developer decided just to tear the house down rather than worry about renting it out or do anything like that. So, I mean, I can tell that this is all going to get developed and it's all going to be great eventually. I just don't see it there yet. You've got Quattro 1, 2, and 3. They've had their issues in the past as well, mostly when it was being built and it burning down. But it's just been really, really rough. In this area too, I know that there's been a bunch of housing right here where the postal office is. There's been a bunch of community housing that's been put in, and by community housing, I'm basically containers, sea cans, put there to help with the homelessness and basically put shelter in place. That actually did really clean up the area quite nicely. But again, am I going to invest there? Do I want to look for tenants in this area? I'm going to admit it here, guys. I really, really don't think I would. So going back, just to kind of reiterate and make you kind of feel comfortable, this kind of north end, the historic district, the Bailey, Gateway, Boulevard, Forsyth, Green Timbers, even personally, I would try and stick away from. I might touch into Green Timbers, but West Village, Central Downtown, Holland Park, I think that's where the future is really going to be. And then as soon as that SkyTrain actually ends up going down Fraser Highway, which hopefully will start happening soon, I think at that point, King George Station is going to look like a really, really smart buy a few years from now if you bought right now, even at these crazy high prices. So there you go. That is a tour of Whalley, where I think you should buy. A bunch of me blabbering on, but I'm going to tell you, having lived in the area, I firmly believe, and I have lived not far from those spots. I firmly believe that the further south you can stay in Whalley, you probably should. If you're interested in trying to invest in that area and you need help and you want my team to help you out, please book a call with me right now down below in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe if you'd like to stay up to date on the market. Check out another video before you go, and we'll see you in a couple of days.